Hello, I'm your host Hilary Rose, and thank you for joining me on this episode of Live Wild. It's a special episode because it is the final episode of season 2. Yes, we have done 10 episodes of season 2 already. I can't believe it. But fear not, we will be back very shortly with another 10 episodes in season 3. So, we wanted to finish out strong for season 2, and who better to finish out with than Dermot Whelan, best-selling author, comedian, broadcaster, meditator, and now podcaster. I worked with Dermot on a comedy TV show which you may remember called The Republic of Telly all those years ago, and since then we've crossed paths many times. We chat about his journey through comedy and TV and radio, facing down panic attacks, and how he finally found his unique offering of combining stand-up with meditation.
I always say that meditation is like, it's like listening to music. There are different styles, there's different techniques, there's different ways of doing it, and you might naturally gravitate towards a style that, that resonates with you. So for me, it was the mantra that I would just repeat. I found it easier to guide my focus to that. And the idea is you just repeat it over and over again in your mind. And when your mind wanders off, which it absolutely will, just realize it's wandered and you bring it back. And that, your mind might wander 100 or 150 times in a couple of minutes. And, that's what minds do. It's okay. We don't beat ourselves up.
I'm so fond of Dermot, and it's been a joy to watch him grow in many areas of his life. And much like myself, he's actually moved into the wellness space. So I think it's such a positive thing. The more voices and choices we have in this space, the better. So I really hope you enjoy this chat and stick around for the end because we dive into a little guided meditation, compliments of Dermot. I hope you enjoy. Dermot Whelan, thank you so much for being on the Live Well podcast today.
Thanks for having me on the Live Well podcast, Hilary. Delighted to be here.
Just before we came on to record, I kind of got a bout of nerves. This is because I was like, this is what he does for a living. Dermot has been interviewing people for years. This is your gig, and now I'm interviewing you. So now I'm like, I hope I don't mess up.
Well, it's what I did for a living, so I don't do that anymore. Well, not on the radio anyway. But you know what? I think you'll be okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I can give you some meditation techniques for the nerves if you want.
Well, maybe at the end we might do a little meditation for the listeners. That might be nice. But
I can't believe you get nervous. All the stuff that you do, in fairness, in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, on stages.
That's true. That's true. I don't get nerves much anymore, but for a split second I went, oh my God, he's really good at this. Now I have to match that in some sense. But I want to talk about, I suppose, I always talk about people's origin story, which I think is a hilarious term. But anyway, your origin story. I mean, it started off, as I recall, behind the scenes. Were you working as an AD at one point, an assistant director?
Yes, I was. Started on the trainee assistant director ladder and worked my way up to third AD, which was one step up the ladder.
Wow.
There's a trainee, third, second, and first. They all have quite different roles, actually, on a film set. But you're basically there as a dog's body for the director and the main assistant director, the first AD. So I did that quite by accident when I came out of college. I had studied archaeology and French and was wondering why after I graduated. It was like, what now? And as my family looked on and went, yes, what now? And a friend of mine, a lovely friend of mine called Sonia, she was working in a production office for a short film and was sick. So she rang me up and said, come here, are you doing it? And do you want to come in and just photocopy things or whatever they ask you to do? So I said, yeah, okay. I wasn't doing anything else. And then I ended up doing it for 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And liked it. It was mad. It's the kind of job I wouldn't do now.
No, 100% not. I know. Poor trainee ADs. I mean, they're literally just herding actors around the place, like herding cats. That's kind of what they do.
Well, it's a strange job because you're given a kind of sense of authority. You're given a job where you're expected to tell other people what to do, except those people that you're telling are fully aware that you have no training and are just there because, black clothes look good on you and somebody handed you a walkie-talkie. This is basically it. And so you're going, quiet, please. Hey, get out of there. Move that car. And they're all like, who are you? Stop giving us orders.
True.
It's an incredible learning experience because you learn so much about people and the different way to approach people when you need them to be on your side, and when you need to work with people and not piss everybody off. So it was a great job from that perspective. And I was outdoors most of the time. And yourself, from when you're filming on location, every day is kind of different. And it's an interesting job to do, particularly in your 20s when you've got no kids and stuff. I don't know how people, with marriages and children manage to stay working in that industry on these long shoots. Because it's so demanding of your time and you're away from home so much. And I remember looking around on a film set going, all these people seem to be divorced. It's like, it must be something that happens. And it's understandable, because you're away on location working very intensely with people a lot of the time, and you're in each other's pockets and you're literally living together and things like that. So, and then you're away from the people at home. So it's a tough job, I would say, on most relationships. So I bailed out of it in my late 20s, and but I still have dreams that I'm back on a film set, and I forget to charge the walkie-talkies. Is always the recurring theme.
That's a nightmare.
Angry electricians coming to me going, "Where are walkie-talkies?" I'm like, I forgot to charge them. So that's my stress dream when I'm not dreaming about doing my Leaving Cert naked.
Oh, I love it. And do you know what? It's funny that you say that, because I noticed on set now that I'm becoming more mature, and I noticed that everyone on set's so young. And I think that's because of the burnout rate that you talked about. People kind of spend a couple of years in it and they're either diehards and stay in it for a very long period of time, or else, there's all trainees coming up all the time. So I noticed the last one I was on set, I was like, everyone is so young. I mean, I feel old now. What's that?
Yeah, but it's a bit like joining the circus. You're on the road, you're away, you're setting up camp here, there, and everywhere. You're driving to a new location every day. And then you live in such close proximity. I can, as you say, it really has to be something that you're utterly committed to, or you're not really good at anything else, or you're too afraid to try anything else.
Or you're broke.
Yeah. But for actors, it could be. I guess it's a little bit different because you get. A little bit more parachuted in and out generally, unless you're like the main lead and you're there from the beginning to the end of the day. But I guess the days, I think, feel a little bit longer for the crews, possibly. And certainly my acting stints on film sets were short-lived, are just short. I was rarely in the big trailer. I might have got my own little cabin from time to time. It was funny. My son is an actor now. He's 16.
Wow.
And he started acting in some film and TV productions. And I was with him on location in August, and we went over to the UK, and he was filming something for Disney Plus over there, just a small part, but he had his own trailer, and it was so funny to be back in that environment all these years later, but this time as a dad chaperoning his son actor, and I was still going to get his food and making him cups of tea, so nothing had changed. I'm still pampering you bloody actors.
Clearly you have a talent for it.
Yeah, make a bloody good cup of tea.
Yeah. So, I mean, from there, you were always involved in music as well and comedy. Which came first for you? Is it music or comedy, or did they just kind of start happening at the same time?
Well, the music part was never massively serious. I mean, I was in bands in school. That weren't very good. And then I was in a band in college, which also was mildly better. And then I was in a punk cover band, which thankfully was punk music, so nobody knew if we were good or bad. We just played very loud and very fast. So I was in that band up until, I guess, maybe 5 years ago or so. But I started stand-up when I was already working in radio. So in my late 20s, I made a demo tape as a newsreader because I could do a very good impression of a newsreader. I had a kind of a At 6 o'clock, here are the headlines. I had one of those. Basically, it was an impression of a newsreader called Jimmy Greeley, who I used to hear on 98 FM from time to time. So much so that when I got the job as a newsreader, they called me Little Jimmy because I was just basically taking off his voice. But I was in radio, I'd say a couple of years, and then Des Bishop came in one night. He used to join the late night shock jock, who was on, after 11 p.m. And Des had heard some of my sketches and said, "Hey man, you should try stand up." So
that's a nice Des impersonation
and mildly threatening. I said, "Okay." So I did an open spot, and then I started. That's how I started doing stand up. And like the main reason I wanted to do stand-up comedy wasn't to stand on a stage and make people laugh. I was in the International Comedy Festival or Comedy Club in Dublin, which is this grotty, sounds so big, but it's the International Bar, and it's a grotty little room which looks like it burnt down, and they just never renovated it. They just put a load of chairs and tables in there. But it's this little room, holds about 50, maybe, maximum 70 people. There's no microphone on the stage because you don't need one. And that's where I was in that club one night, long before I thought of doing any stand-up. And there was a bunch of the comedians who were performing sitting at the table in front of the stage. And I was just sitting in the table beside them, and I was listening to them talk, and they were making each other laugh, and they were all really funny. And I just thought, I want to be sitting at that table. I want to be a comedian surrounded by other comedians. And do
you remember who was at that table, out of interest?
I think back, I don't, but at the time it was probably like Joe Rooney. It might even have been like Dylan Moran or these guys, because it was in fairly early days of the International Bar, comedy club. And I remember just thinking, that looks just like the coolest table to be at. How do I get to sit at a table like that and just make each other laugh? And then years later, I was sitting at that very table, laughing my head off at other comedians going, "Oh my God, I'm here." So.
Did you have that moment when you were sitting at the table? Did you literally have that moment? Oh my God, this is where I wanted to be, and now I'm here.
Yeah, I did. And another time, one of the reasons why I started to put a guitar into my act was because a lot of other comedians would suggest because my jokes weren't strong enough.
Sound.
So I had to bring the guitar in. But crutch, look at my big crutch.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing a guy walking through town carrying a guitar case, and it looked like, and he said to his friend, "I'll see you later, I've got a gig." And then he kept walking, and I thought, God, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. I'll see you later, I've got a gig. How do I become that guy? So I started to play the guitar and work it into my set. And then one day, my wife, I remember, very rock and roll, was dropping me off to the gig out of the car. And I went, "Okay, see you later," and shut the door, and then walked away with my guitar case in my hand. I was like, oh my God, I'm the guy. I'm going to a gig. So most of the things in my life that I tend to do are, I see somebody doing them and go, how do I become that guy or that person?
Amazing. Amazing. That looks cool. I want to do that. And then you do it. Yeah. But it's nice that you actually have the moment of recognition, because for so many people go through their lives wishing and wanting and never have that moment of recognition, when it's there around them and they have achieved what they achieve. And I think that's a really interesting thing. It's like you should, I feel like I should bookmark parts of my life. It becomes more satisfactory in a way, or I don't know, it's like a kind of bookmarking your life makes you feel like you achieve things,
And that was one of the funny things about leaving the radio back in August. For your listeners who maybe I'm over explaining, but if your listeners don't know, I worked in radio for 20 years and then I recently left. And so I've spent the last few months regretting my decision. No, I'm very confident of my decision. But doing that actually gives you a chance to look back over your 20 years and go, wow, that was something really cool. I had so much fun. I worked with so many cool people. I achieved a lot, and it gives you a chance to have that perspective. Now, it's quite a dramatic way of getting that perspective, but I do agree. I think a lot of the times we can just be on that, famous treadmill of life, and we don't really get a chance to really appreciate what, the stuff that we've done, because life is so busy at the moment. We can constantly feel that we're not doing enough, and that we're not fitting enough in, and that other people are sort of winning the race, getting ahead of us in the life race. Certainly it's something I'm prone to, and that's one of the real benefits of meditation for me. And one of the reasons why I have to do it is because I have to try everything I can to get into the present moment and feel a sense of, where I am, what I've achieved, how much I have actually done, and not be constantly letting my mind drift to the list of undone things on my to-do list, and sometimes I spend a little bit too much time there, because I'm excited about things and I want stuff to happen. And like you, I've lots of different interests, and I think my talents kind of spread across a broad enough area. So you're constantly feeling, you're looking at more people of, how do I become that guy? When actually at times maybe it's, why don't I just look at this guy for a few minutes or even a few moments, and appreciate actually the things that I have done, whether that's in my lifetime, in my job, in my personal life, in the last day, in the afternoon, or in the last hour, just appreciating, I am doing a lot of stuff, and I should recognize that, and not be giving myself a hard time for not getting enough done.
Absolutely, and honor that, and like also, it's interesting when you touched on those lists. Those I call them the external validation lists, and I've got plenty of them to get through. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but sometimes it really does feel like, I remember describing it to someone when I was struggling with it a bit. It was like there was an invisible referee. Like there's an invisible referee in my, standing somewhere around me, and it's constantly, an invisible scorekeeper. Sorry, that's what I call it. Invisible scorekeeper. So someone who's basically literally keeping score of all the life points that you're earning,
Yeah. Or not, as you're perceiving that you're not earning them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that he's sort of shaking his head ruefully going, what's he writing? What's he writing?
TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit like your Irish oral exam or something. It's like, what are they writing? But it's how, first of all, where did that invisible scorekeeper come from? Because nobody's keeping score on your life. It's not a competition, it's not a race. But I guess in this era of comparison that we live in, because everyone on social media and online and even on TV are all, sometimes it can feel like everyone is doing more exciting things and doing better and is more successful, or so it does feel like a bit of a race or a competition sometime, but it's all in our heads, because
100%.
on our deathbeds we're not going, oh my God, I really wish I'd got that leather jacket, and worn it in a video. I guess this is really showing my age now. I think, what's cool? Accent file of 50-year-old man, leather jacket. That's what all the kids
In a
want.
music video.
Yeah. But you're not going to regret reels you never did. You know what I mean? You're not going to. You'll think, did I spend enough time with the people that I care about? Did I tell them that I love them enough? Did I leave them at least good memories, even if I left them no money? Did I leave them good memories and a sense of themselves?
Yeah.
Then that's all you can really focus your attention on. What we can try anyway.
Absolutely. So coming from, comedy, going into radio, going into TV, and then coming into the process that you're in now, which is, you are a master of wisdom and meditation. Congratulations.
Thanks. My wife doesn't like when I use that or when that's said, because she said, in her own words, it sounds a bit wanky. So, and she's not wrong. Yes, I've trained as a meditation teacher, and that was the official title of my certification.
What was the catalyst for the change for you to shift from where you were into where you are now?
Well, I mean, it began a long, long time ago. It's not as if I, in the last couple of years, sort of went, oh, I think I'll just be a meditation teacher.
You
You
were
know,
like, I just want to be that guy.
yeah, that guy in the lotus position. How do I become it? I just want to be at a table full of meditators,
Yeah.
meditating at each other.
Playing
Um,
guitar.
yeah, yeah. Um, you know, I talk about it in my book, and in terms of the moments where, I remember, I had a panic attack in 2007 going to a comedy festival. And, that was a very frightening experience because I literally thought I was dying. So that's one of those pivotal moments for me where I was like, okay, what's happening? What's happening in my mind and my body? What's going on? Why do I have anxiety? Is that a thing? What is anxiety? Um, why am I a nervous wreck? Does everyone have the thoughts I'm having? I thought everybody was kind of nervous about stuff. Um, and that kind of got my mind. I guess that was the beginning of cultivating some level of self-awareness where I went, oh, okay, I can't just drink 50 million pints and smoke 40 Marlboro Lights and feel fine, and use it to cover up whatever uncomfortable feelings I'm having about being in a crowded room or being on stage or simply being who I am, So from there, I discovered meditation by accident through a wonderful lady called Siobhan McKenna, who was teaching it to the Gardaí at the time. And I was like,
Wow.
maybe there's more to this stuff than, the old floaty linen trousers or Lululemon yoga pants brigade that, that I thought all this stuff was for. And then I started to practice it, and I did it. I started kind of doing it seriously in about 2011, really, and I guess over time it became like there were two sides to me. There was the, quiet, more spiritual, meditating version of me, and then there was the outward comedian, jazz hands, performer style part of me, and I always thought like, I thought they were at odds with each other a lot of the time, the kind of party animal and the quiet meditator. And I wondered how I was ever going to bring those two parts of myself together. Of course, I understand now they weren't two opposing parts. They were just two different, equally interesting parts of the same person. But when I started blending stand up and meditation, that's when I suddenly started to feel aligned, that I was putting these strands of myself together, and I often think, that's where a lot of fulfillment comes from, is that sense that we are bringing more of ourselves to the table. I think certainly it's why we get bored in jobs or bored in relationships or bored in locations even, is because at some point we stop bringing there are other parts of ourselves that aren't really being heard in those places, in the relationship, in the job, whatever it is, and you start to feel bored or disillusioned or fidgety. So for me, when I began to blend the stand-up comedy and humor with really powerful, scientifically proven and ancient techniques that had really worked for me, suddenly everything changed. A light came on for me, and over the last 5 years or so, it's just been a joy being able to teach this stuff, whether that's to, a bunch of people in a hardworking company, or whether it's standing on a stage to, regular Joes, not in a company, or, whether it's even on telly or whatever it is, just trying to make this stuff accessible, and that's my goal with all of it.
Because you've toured with this, haven't you? And you continue to tour.
Yeah, I did the Mindful tour over the last couple of years, and again, it was a bit like the stage version of my book. I mean, the whole reason I wrote Mindful, the book, was because when I was looking to get into this stuff, I couldn't find content that I could really relate to. It was really spiritual, or else it was really academic, and I frankly, the font was too small, and I wanted to write a book that I would have liked to have gotten, which was like
Lovely.
somebody normal. I'm not a monk. I'm not a yogi. I still have a pint. I was just someone who whose life soup just got a bit, a bit thick. If maybe it's the wrong analogy. I just got a bit burnt out and stressed out like a lot of people. And I had to learn the techniques that would kind of bring me around. And once you start to implement those techniques, then you start to learn a whole lot of stuff about yourself, because you can't avoid it, because you're actually, for the first time in your life, starting to spend some quality time with yourself, So that's what I try to bring to the live shows. It's just fun. I want the stuff to be presented with a smile and a laugh, because, when I heard the guy who trained me in California is a guy called David G. And I heard him on a random internet radio station, and he was talking about this stuff, but he was really funny. And I was like, how come, I didn't know you could have a belly laugh and actually have a really deep conversation about consciousness at the same time, or learn a breathing technique that would help you with an exam or a job interview or a trip to the dentist or whatever it is. It's a lot of the time the stuff is presented so piously, sort of,
or esoterically as well. It's just some of it's just so mind-boggling, because I think that's ancient text that you're trying to decipher, but it's not really in our language, our everyday language anymore.
Yeah, and that's not to take away from that stuff. Sometimes I get a little bit of criticism from people who think that I'm making it too simple, and that I'm stripping out too much of the depth. And I to that I say, well, I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm presenting it to people who wouldn't normally gravitate towards this, because they're put off by a lot of that stuff. And all I'm offering them is a way in. It's just a doorway, and for a lot of people, a 16-second breathing technique is the thing that opens their eyes, and they go, wow, I didn't know it could be that simple. I thought I had to do a course, or I had to change who people I hang around with, or I had to read a load of books I'm not interested in. And once you just get people over the threshold, then they can find their own way in. They can totally, immerse themselves in ancient Indian scripture if that's what they want to do. Or they can, come at it from a sporting and athletic angle and learn, elements of nasal breathing and different breathing techniques in that space. It's really up to the individual. But I guess all I'm trying to do with humor is to give people a space where they can be comfortable, because I've been in a lot of these, meditation, our spiritual, our wellness environments in the past, and a lot of them I have felt uncomfortable and like I didn't belong, because they didn't seem to be my tribe. And as much as I tried, it just wasn't my scene, and I think that's true for a lot of people, whether they're driving a digger or a truck, or they're working in an office, or they're a solicitor or a stay-at-home mom, or whatever it happens to be. A lot of the time they just want this stuff presented to them in a way that they can relate to, and possibly have a laugh about it and laugh at themselves,
Yeah.
And once we kind of, if we can use that humor and our ability to laugh at ourselves to sort of disarm all those preconceptions we had about this whole space, then we can actually start to feel the benefits of it and weave it into our days and our lives,
How did you weave it into your life? Like, what kind of operating system did it give you? Can you share a little bit about maybe a daily practice that you do? Hey, if you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to show your support, if you like, you can buy us a coffee using the Buy Me a Coffee app, or online at buymeacoffee.com/livewildpodcast, or just click the link in our show notes, it will take you there. Alternatively, you can also donate crypto to the show using the BitDonate app, or at bitdonate.com and search for Live Wild, or just follow the link in the show notes. Either or both those donations really help us make the best show possible. And as always, you can like, subscribe, and share the show with your mates or on social media. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah, sure. Well, the first system that I learned, simply because when the lady who taught me it, this is what she was a teacher of, and it was Deepak Chopra's primordial sound meditation. So I guess a lot of your listeners would be probably familiar with Deepak Chopra, but if you're not, he's like Bono of the spiritual world.
The perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, he's a global superstar at this stage, written 90-something books, fascinating guy, and I had the pleasure of spending an evening with him not so long ago, and just really humble, down to earth guy despite everything he's achieved. And he worked with Maharishi in the 60s, and he, I guess, was the man who brought a lot of this content to the Western world. So Deepak, through his medical background, ended up going into a bit more of an alternative medical field. But again, he made this stuff accessible to millions of people who, again, mightn't have gravitated towards this kind of thing or felt it wasn't for them. So through his primordial sound techniques, and that sounds very grand, but all it really is that based on the time and location you were born, you're issued with a mantra. And so a mantra is simply a syllable, a word, or a phrase to be repeat silently or aloud, if you like, over and over again. That's just what we use to anchor our attention. And so that's how I got into it. So I've kind of stuck with the mantra style, but I always say that meditation is like, it's like listening to music. There are different styles, there's different techniques, there's different ways of doing it. And you might naturally gravitate towards a style that, that resonates with you. So for me, it was the mantra that I would just repeat. I found it easier to guide my focus to that. And the idea is you just repeat it over and over again in your mind. And when your mind wanders off, which it absolutely will, just realize it's wandered and you bring it back. And that, your mind might wander 100 or 150 times in a couple of minutes. And, that's what minds do. It's okay. We don't beat ourselves up. So my kind of daily ritual would be that I would use that mantra technique. He had suggested that you use 3 kind of key questions to kind of set yourself up for the day. And a lot of the time I will ask those. So the first one is simply, who am I? Which sounds very grand, or maybe something uttered by someone after their drink was spiked. But I guess what that question allows us to do is to, I compare it to, just dipping beneath the turbulent waves and going into that still place, because our days are very, very busy and we wear a lot of hats throughout the day. It could be being a parent or a partner or a boss or a business owner or, an entrepreneur, carer, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes it's just nice to go, actually, beneath all of that stuff, all the things on my to-do list and my diary and, all my duties and responsibilities, just who am I? Who am I? And it's really just about opening that dialogue, and starting that conversation. You don't have to have a big epiphany every time you ask the question, but it can get us out of that busyness, out of those, frothing waters, and pull us down into that nice little bit of silence. The next question then is what is my purpose, or what is my dharma, to give it its more ancient name? So that's the next question that I would ask. So what's my purpose? Sometimes we can get caught up with all the things that we feel like we should be doing and the things that we haven't gotten around to, and actually maybe just reconnecting. Okay, what is my purpose here? Is it just to be with the people that I love? Is it to use my talents? Is it whatever it happens to be? And again, you don't need answers. You're just starting that conversation with yourself. And then the last question is, what am I grateful for? And nothing brings you into the present moment quicker than a bit of gratitude,
I love that. Yeah.
I know. And a lot of people, would roll their eyes and go, oh, God, gratitude, he's going to
here we go again on the gratitude.
Get out his glitter journal now and, make us make us write in our glittery journal with our, our scented pens and say, I'm so grateful for sunshine. But, it's, if you're in the present moment, being grateful about something, the upshot of that is that you're not in the future worrying about stuff that might or mightn't happen. And you're not in the past thinking about all the crappy stuff that did happen. You're actually in the present moment. And that's where our nervous systems and our minds are happiest. So whether gratitude is your way into that space, or whether it's focusing on your breath, or whether it's repeating a mantra, or whether it is cycling in the countryside, or whether it is jumping into cold water, or having a belly laugh with a best friend, whatever your technique is for getting into that present space, that's where our minds are happy. There's a great study from Harvard, about 10 years ago, that's called A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind, which you may have heard. And basically they worked out from that experiment that, we spend over 50% of our time not thinking about the thing that we're doing. Our minds are either in the future or in the past. We're not present more than half the time. And what that means is, and what they found was that the more our mind bounces from the future to the past and back and forward and back and forward. What if this happens? Oh my God, I remember when that happened. I hope this doesn't happen. The more time we spend in that space, the less happy we are. It's just what the scientific results tell us. So anything that pulls you into the present moment, and it doesn't have to be meditation, that's just a tool. Anything can help you, So that would be my daily routine. And then I'm a big fan of the mini moments. And in fact, they're more important to me almost. And they're the ones where I take, a few resetting breaths. I was doing them in the car on the way in here today. And excuse me, if I find myself getting a little bit tense, with the children in the evening time, maybe I'll just do a few resetting breaths. Sometimes if I feel super fizzy and wired and daddy's about to lose the plot, I'll remove myself. Yes. And I'll go to my little hutch in the back garden. And, I will, one of my favorite things is to get down on my knees and put my forehead on the floor.
Oh, lovely.
And just let my hands just sit around my head. That looks almost like I'm sheltering from, the roof is about to collapse in on top of me. But actually, it's just a real sort of surrender pose. And I just say, okay, let me just let go of anything that I've picked up today. And I might laugh, I might weep, I might yawn. Anything could happen, but it's just a way of flushing out all the stuff that I pick up. And I really have to do that a lot, I think we just carry this stuff around.
We do. We carry it around for years and decades and are not even aware of it. And it's interesting when you say you might laugh or weep or yawn or any of those things, but that's always a signal for like a nervous system reset or a nervous system just letting go of little things. I used to find when I would go to the gym and do really intensive workouts, I was constantly yawning, couldn't figure out. And it's not like I was tired because I was really, working hard, lifting heavy weights, and I wasn't tired, didn't feel tired, but it was a constant yawn. And now I know that was my nervous system trying to release, trying to let go of stress that was in the body. So it's really interesting little telltale signs if you can tune into it,
Yeah, it is, really is. And I find that with the gym as well. And I have to be really careful that I balance it out, certainly as I get older, because, sometimes you go, oh my God, I don't feel great. This, I'm a bit agitated. I'll just go to the gym and I'll work it out of me, and sometimes that works. But for me, a lot of the time it doesn't. I get the endorphin boost, but then I might be anxious or agitated or a bit ratty. A bit, sometimes I'm like, what the hell did you put that there for? And then I've said to my wife, actually, sorry, Jim Ratty. And she's like, okay, go out to your little space. So I have to make sure that the workout's great, but it sometimes, because you're clenching and everything is stiff and you're like, you can be adding to that sense of tension and stress. So again, something that allows you to release, like flopping down or, lying on a yoga bolster, under your back. So you kind of open your chest out, or, anything. Could be just lying down on the couch with the dog or whatever it is. Just giving yourself a chance to release some of that stuff,
Yeah, when I talk about the gym, I mean, that's a lifetime ago. I haven't been in the gym in quite a while. And I think because I probably overdid it because I was trying to release the stress and did some back damage. So I haven't been there for a while. But now it's interesting that you've just mentioned all of that, because I've come around to very, very, very gentle somatic exercises. Like they're so gentle, they're done in bed. You're just basically lying down, just moving, little movements in the arms and the legs. And the release that I've had from these really gentle somatic exercises are mind-blowing. Really, really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
The body keeps score, of everything.
Absolutely. And, sometimes, again, if you say to somebody, oh, I just like to put my head on the floor and cry. They're like, okay, Dermot's having a nervous breakdown. Well, actually, it's the opposite, because I'm letting go of the stuff that's going to cause me to have a nervous breakdown. And I remember I did a talk in what was it for? Yeah, like a couple of hundred school principals and vice principals. It was one of their conferences. And obviously a very hardworking, straightforward, straight thinking bunch of people who do an amazing job at minding all our children and trying their best to teach them. And a guy came up to me after it, and he was in his late 60s, and he said he'd retired, and he says, meditation's great. I do it. And I was like, oh, good for you. And he goes, yeah, that's where I do all my crying. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, that's where I do all my crying. That nothing else in life makes me cry. I could be at 100 funerals, won't shed a tear. But I go into that space of meditation and I cry my eyes out and I feel brilliant after it.
Bless. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's so good.
And he said it so matter-of-factly, that I was like, yes, more of that,
Yeah.
Because as you say, the body is so intelligent, and a lot of the time it just needs permission, and even just, for me, I literally say to my body, okay, let's do this. Let's let go of all that stuff. I can feel it. There's something in there. Go on, let it out. I give you 100% permission. And sure enough, it'll come out. But that dialogue with our body is something that is rarely, it's rarely done. A lot of us don't, because we're constantly in our minds. We just don't converse with our bodies.
No, we're not taught to either. We're not raised to. It's not kind of any in our culture. Oh, have a chat with your body there and see what's up. You're not taught that unless you go through meditation techniques or go through therapy, even, where you have to really check in and really find out what's going on inside. And I think that's really, I think more of it should be taught, to really check in with oneself and check in what's going on with the body. Why do I have a physical ailment? Why is my my immune system constantly down? They're all telltale signs of something, your body trying to tell you something's not quite right,
Yeah, and it's a technique I was doing this morning, and I put it up on one of my stories recently because it just struck me that, if you meet somebody in the street, the first thing you'll say is, "How are you?" That's the first thing you do, is you check in with them. But we very rarely check in with ourselves. We never actually just direct that inward for a moment and go, "How are you?" So when you wake up in the morning, you go, "Okay, how are you?"
Yeah.
It may sound weird, but first of all, I'll do a scan at a physical level. So go, okay, how are you? Or how am I? Or however you want to phrase it. And you just literally do a kind of a Star Trek scan of yourself. You can add sound effects if you want.
That was perfect.
But, resisting any urge to fix it, or find answers, just go, okay, my shoulder's a little bit stiff. I have a very slight headache. My knee is cracking or whatever it is. And you go, okay, thanks for letting me check in. Then you go, okay, how am I emotionally? How am I feeling? You're like, okay, actually a little bit of anxiety, I think, today. I'm a little bit worried about X, Y, or Z, and whatever that is. Okay, thanks for letting me know. And even that process of just going, how are you? It has the same effect as if someone came to you and asked you, how are you doing? And you get to say, well, actually, I'm a bit worried about my daughter, or, my elderly mom isn't in a great way, and after that conversation, you feel a little bit better because somebody cared, you can do the same for yourself, and you don't have to fix everything, but you may find that the headache that you recognized suddenly is gone, and the stiffness in your shoulder doesn't feel as bad. And, even just by acknowledging it, and giving yourself that little bit of attention, it seems to dissipate, and you feel a little bit more positive and a bit more present then,
It's almost like, a child, if a child comes to you in some sort of pain, something that you can't necessarily fix for them, but it's almost like just a witnessing or an acknowledgement of it, and their pain goes, It's
completely. Yeah. You can even put a little plaster on your boo-boo.
Yeah, exactly. Just wake up with a, box of plasters next to the bed.
Yeah. You poor diddums.
But it's like this level of self-care we've never been taught. So,
Yeah.
good on you if you're spreading that. I want to talk about the radio for a second. I had this question written down, and the question is, how did Karina, your lovely wife, react when you said you were going to leave the radio? And then I thought, no, how did Dave react when you said you were going to leave the radio? You know, because you're there for such a long time. You guys were partners for such a long time. It must have been a massive decision for you to step away from that. And how did you tell Dave? Did he get a sense of beforehand? And how did he take it when you did actually utter the
I threw a
words?
rock through his bedroom window with paper tied to it saying, "I'm leaving." Well, look, I think your thoughts were right, because I always felt like I had two wives. I had my home wife, Karina, and I had my work wife, which was Dave. But yeah, first up, well, Karina was really supportive. And in fact, I think she was kind of relieved because she didn't have to listen to me moan anymore about, when those days you come home and you're disillusioned and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. you know, So, she's just amazing. She's always supporting me and in my front row, as they say, cheering me on. Dave, I don't think he was that surprised, because I had been doing the meditation teaching side hustle for a few years. And he could see how passionate I was about it. I did my, the live tours while I was still there. Although I was managing to eke more and more time off while I was doing it. So he wasn't massively surprised. But I think, it's still the same. If you think someone's going to leave and then they eventually turn around and actually say the words, then it all feels a bit more real. So I think he had a bit of adjustment. But, again, Dave's been a massive support to me and still continues to be over the years. So, he was like, am I disappointed? Absolutely. I love working with you. It's a great job and our ratings have never been higher. Thanks for that.
Ending on a high note.
Great timing there, Dermo. But, at the same time, he goes, look, I wish you nothing but well with this new project. And I know how passionate you are about it, and, best of luck. And also it's given him the chance to fly his own flag, and go solo and experience life outside of the duo and, life as just Dave and not and Dave, which he's very happy about. I know he is. So, yeah, the Dermot and Dave project, I think is not dead. And I think after we find our own space for a little while longer, the plan is definitely to circle back and do something
lovely
together in some shape or form. So that I'd be really excited about that,
Tell us about your upcoming trip to Kilimanjaro, and where was that born out of, and why are you doing it?
As it gets closer, I'm asking myself the same question. In fact, at the time of this recording, I have had 6 tropical disease inoculations, whatever you call them. I should know this word, because vaccines. There we go. How did I forget that word? Both arms are feeling quite dead today because I had to get these things in. But yeah, why am I doing it? Do you know what? I don't really know. I think, again, it was, hey, look at that guy climbing the mountain. How do I become that guy who's gasping for breath at 6,000 meters? But you know what? Weirdly, the mountain became this great physical representation of this new departure for me, this new adventure. And it seemed to slot into the calendar at a time when I was thinking quite seriously about leaving. And I was sort of daydreaming about, I would just love to be climbing that mountain without the pressure of doing 5 radio shows a week, and just make that be my thing, and my job. And now that's what it is. I'm bringing 15 meditators up there with me, and we're just going to go on this grand adventure. And, I guess, why do we do these challenges? I turned 50 this year, so that could be something to do with it. Thanks. I'm still here. And, I just hope I get to the top, and I hope we all get there safely. And, I'm a big believer in putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Kilimanjaro, but it could be just getting on the tube in London if you're not comfortable with that, or making that phone call to a friend who's going through a rough time but you don't know what to say. Whatever this, driving on the M50, whatever puts you out of your comfort zone, I think is really important. When we don't do that, we can fall into the rut and we can start feeling a bit more meh about the things and people in our life, and we can start taking things for granted. And, I hope for me, this is just another one of those things that sort of represents this new departure for my career and like the direction that my life is taking. And I hope it's just an amazing experience where I get to be in the present moment and appreciate what I have and how beautiful the earth is and how beautiful Tanzania is and Kilimanjaro, I hope.
There's nothing like putting one foot in front of another, climbing a mountain to be in the present moment. There's nothing more present than struggling up a mountain.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, it's almost a cliche at this point for, climbing the mountain. Just put one foot in front of the other. But it's so true. I mean, if you are just focusing on one step after another, then you're not thinking about the top and you're not thinking about the bottom. You're just in that space, and it's an extreme way of getting into the present moment. The altitude sickness is something that I guess is certainly putting me out of my comfort zone. I'm hoping that my body reacts positively to it. But you got to get up there and find out. So I'm going to give it a go.
And so when you get to the top, hopefully you're going to sit there safely and meditate, perhaps at the top.
Not sure if we'll meditate at the top. I was certainly be meditating at the bottom, seeing how we go on the way up. But because the air is so thin up there, you don't spend particularly long at the top. So I would love the idea of just us all, even just for a minute or two, being able to just sit down and appreciate where we are, in a moment of stillness. And if it's a clear dawn where we're looking at the sunrise, that would be, that's the dream. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm going up there to hopefully create that moment, which would be amazing.
Oh, well, I hope you get it, and I've no doubt that you will. You'll find that moment. And if not that one, another one which will blow your mind equally.
Yeah. You also got to be okay with, look, there is a chance that maybe you won't get to the top. Maybe somebody will go, look, your altitude sickness is, is too acute and you're going to have to head on down. So that's the other thing. And I guess there's other life lessons in that, and that, with all the good intentions and will in the world, sometimes you got to accept what's happening. So I'm aware of that reality as well.
Can we come back to meditation for just a second? I'd love to, well, if you can, talk us through a little guided meditation, if you want to and can, just a short one before we finish out. Sure. But I want to ask you a question. Whether you want to or can share it, or I'm not sure, but what is the most bizarre thing that has happened to you during a meditation?
Do you know what? It's a great question. And, from the very moment that I started meditating, and I don't tend to say this very often because I feel that it puts other potential beginners, may think, oh God, well, if I don't experience that, then
then I'm not doing it right. And there's no such thing as doing it right or wrong.
No, it's different for everybody. And from the very start, I began to experience very bizarre things. Can
you share?
Well, a lot of them were like big energetic surges would be one of the main ones. I saw images of myself dressed in robes in front of altars. I started to speak languages that I had never learned. And when I Googled the words, they turned out to be like Sanskrit and Hebrew and all these other languages. I realized that I've actually never said this before. So I realize as I'm saying it can sound a bit kooky, but at the time I thought I was going mad. I thought I was going bananas. And it was actually so intense that I didn't want to go back into that space again. But over time, I suppose I I remember like desperately trying to talk to people. I remember I went to a retreat in Cavan in a Buddhist center because I knew there was a Buddhist monk there, and I wanted to tell him, I'm experiencing all these things. I'm seeing these visions. I'm speaking these languages. I'm singing hymns I've never learned. I'm doing yoga postures I've never learned. What's happening? And he just looked at me like I was completely crazy. And I was like, is this normal? Is this what you're... And then half of me was thinking, maybe he's just dedicated his whole life to this stuff and has never experienced any of it. And now he's looking at me going, you bastard, you're getting all these amazing revelations.
You just started. How are you getting this stuff?
Yeah. And I remember, dying to tell my teacher as well about it. And he just went, that's nice. And I was like, why does he not think this is amazing? And he just, look, everyone's different, and whatever you're experiencing is you. Some people see colors, some people see Jesus, some people think of work, some people, start to feel sad. It's different for everybody. So I guess over the years, I just accept whatever comes out. Some days my meditations are very quiet. I'm just, repeating my mantra and that's it. Other days my mind is bouncing here, there and everywhere and I can't get out of the future and out of the past. And then other days I'm rolling around on the rug, doing crazy yoga postures and, weeping and speaking really strange languages. And sometimes I'm laughing my head off. So I just have learned not to actually question it anymore, and I really believe that all it is, a lot of the time, is us tapping into our body, and our body wants to release stuff. Our body just wants to let stuff go. And sometimes it will need to put itself into a particular yoga posture, on the floor for that stuff to release. Maybe it's trying to fix things with your organs that you don't know about. I think your body's way more able to fix things itself if you just give it some permission to do that. And, and sometimes it's just a lot of that tension coming out in different forms. And then I think that, I think there is, not unlike the cloud that we are very familiar with on our laptops and phones, that we can draw information down from. I believe there's a cloud of consciousness that, that in the right circumstances we can draw down from. So we can pull down languages maybe that we're not familiar with, or we can pull down information that maybe we mightn't have known, or we can pull down insights or creativity or aha moments or, whatever it happens to be. But the detail isn't important. It's really about just putting ourselves into that space to allow whatever needs to happen for you to happen. And that's kind of it. So whether that's a one breath meditation on a bus, or whether it's a retreat in the Himalayas for a couple of weeks, or whatever it happens to be for you, I think that's just about creating that space, and whatever happens.
And to not judge it when it does happen. I think that's not judge it and not go down the rabbit hole of it as well. That's one thing that I found. Something would happen, I go, oh my God, this has such significant meaning in my life. And then I follow down this rabbit hole and I lose a week down this rabbit hole of something that was just probably, I don't know, energetic within my lineage or coming from that cloud,
Yeah. But isn't it fun? Once we don't become, as you say, obsessed by it all, just let it do its thing, and then, because you always got to get up then and, change a nappy or go to work or,
there you go. Yeah.
Prune the hedge, whatever it happens to be.
Go cook a dinner,
Yeah.
I mean, it might end up being some kind of Egyptian dinner because, you just got an Egyptian download, but.
Exactly.
Dermot, we're nearly finished. So I'd love to do the Live Wild quick fire round with you, if that's okay. And then maybe if you're open to it, would you finish out the session with a tiny little meditation? Guided meditation session? That would be lovely. Okay, so this is the Live Wild quick fire round. Are you ready, Dermot Whelan?
I am ready.
Okay. Do you believe in magic?
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite form of meditation and why?
Mantra meditation, because my mind bounces around less when I let my attention focus on a mantra. On my breath, it's not quite as easy to connect to.
What do you stand for?
My when there's no chairs.
Oh, there's the comic. There he is.
What do I stand for? Wow. What do I stand for? I guess I stand for being kind to yourself. If we all were kinder to ourselves, the world would be a whole lot easier to live in, I think.
Agreed. Yeah. If you were to distill yourself down to an essence, what would that essence be?
Curiosity, I think.
Oh, nice.
Essential oil of curiosity.
Nice. What's the wildest thing you've ever done?
I'll tell you when I get back from Kilimanjaro.
Oh, yeah, there you go. What is the one thing you do every day that helps you live wild and free? Because it is the Live Wild podcast, so I have to ask that question.
Got to be meditation for me. Yeah, I would say so. And hug and kiss my wife. They're non-negotiables.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today. I have loved this chat. I think it's...
Me too.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been excellent. And we didn't even talk about Republicatelli. That's probably a whole other podcast. Yeah. I totally forgot to ask you about it.
This is why we both meditate.
Yes, exactly.
Why we've gone down this road.
We have wiped...
That was unsustainable.
We have wiped that part of our lives from our brains through meditation.
All those after show parties and trips to Copperface Jack's.
Wow. Wow. Fun times, and did what it needed to do, but here we are.
Yeah.
And with that, would you like to guide us through a little meditation, and then we'll for you and for me and for the listeners.
Okay. Well, why don't we do a little bit of the one I was talking about earlier? So
gorgeous. Okay.
It's a nice one. So let's get nice and settled, nice and comfy. If you can, uncross your legs, uncross your arms. If you want to keep your eyes crossed, that's fine. So put one hand on your belly and let's just connect in with our body for a little bit. And this can take us out of our head and out of the future and out of the past. And as we breathe in, you're going to feel an invisible balloon inflate in your belly. And hold that balloon there inflated for a moment and then let it go. Really good. I'm going to do one more of those. Nice, slow breath into your belly. And we hold and then we let it go. Really nice. Now, if it's safe to do so, you can let your eyes gently float closed if they haven't already. And I'd like you just to introduce the first one of those questions, and that is, who am I? Who am I? So we're not looking for any amazing insights. You don't have to have all the answers. We're just starting that conversation. Who am I? Just giving ourselves this chance to come out of those turbulent seas and just come into a nice quiet space. Just ourselves. Who am I? Really good. Now we're going to ask, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? Probably something small, to be a good friend, to be a good parent, to simply be kind to myself, to enjoy life, whatever it is. And the last question we're going to ask is, what am I grateful for? Maybe it's, who am I grateful for? Just let an image of whatever that happens to be. Just pick one thing, one person, and just get clear on it in your mind. Just let an image bubble up in your mind. Have that sense of that person or that thing, but most importantly, the feeling that they give you. Is it safety, security, love, joy? Really nice. We're going to put one hand over our heart. We're going to lock that in. We're going to take a nice breath into our heart. Hold and then let it go. And then we're going to have one into our belly. And then we let it go. And you can wiggle your fingers and your toes. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. And there we go. And now that you're all nice and relaxed, you can just email me your bank details. Send me that. Send me that information. Let it go. Just let it all go. And there we go.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I could feel my shoulders just coming down.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just roll
awesome.
our chairs now onto the floor.
Yeah, start crying, whatever. I'm good with that.
Well, keep doing what you're doing. I'm a big fan. I love watching you from afar and seeing all the wonderful things that you've done and are doing since Republic of Telly. Your life has certainly gone in really interesting directions. So, it's really lovely, Hilary, to spend the time with you and have the chats. And I look forward to more.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making these episodes. Thank you, as always, to our amazing guests. A special thank you to Aoife McNamara, my co-producer extraordinaire from Imagine Media. Please like, share, subscribe, and rate us. It all really helps. And remember, this content is for education and entertainment purposes. In short, it's not gospel. I always say, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Always question everything and do your own research.